Hello guys, and welcome to Fitz's Guide to Planetside 2. The first thing I'm going to teach you is basic flight controls of an Empire-specific fighter in Planetside 2. The reason I'm starting with that is that I don't believe enough people make use of aerial vehicles within Planetside 2, especially the NC. So if you're having difficulty getting started, or you've reached a point in your Planetside career that you've become curious about flying, then stick around and I'll show you the ropes. First thing I want you to do is hover. That's simple. This allows you to become accustomed to the aircraft controls without having to move at big speeds. So hold down the S key and your ESF will begin to float, just like mine. Use the mouse to level off so that you're not moving anywhere. That's the first thing you need to do. Okay, so now it's time to try some things. Pick a direction and gently move the mouse that way. So I'm going to start with pitching down. By pushing the mouse forward slightly, my nose points towards the floor and the aircraft begins moving forwards. Very simple. When I pitch up, the noise points to the sky and I begin slowly moving backwards. Very useful if you found yourself in a tough little spot. By rolling gently to one side or the other, I begin strafing. Just try all these movements out a few times, guys, so that you can get used to the way the mouse makes the aircraft behave. The last controls you need to try are the yaw controls. Now these are traditionally bound to the A and D keys, so I'm going to try those now. Notice how I'm flatly turning to one side or the other, just like I would in a Sundra or something. This makes it nice and easy. So the aircraft in Planetside 2 are all VTOL aircraft, which means they're all capable of vertical takeoffs and landings. Which also means that their flight mechanics introduce a thrust from under their belly, meaning that I can behave like a helicopter as well as like a fighter jet. This becomes more apparent in other aircraft than ESF, but it's still important to the maneuvers that we perform. Lesson 2, guys. Controls. Now I've already touched a little bit on these, but I'll just take you through some quick key bindings which will make your life a lot easier in the future. Personally, I have my roll keys bound to Q and E. Let's click on the aircraft tab. So roll left is not only bound to left and right, but is also bound to Q and E. This allows me to hit them very quickly and gives me full roll left and right. This does, however, mean I've had to rebind my spot key. I now have it bound to tab, which is quite good for me because I'm an old PvP WoW player. My new show score key is well out of the way because I don't use that all the time. The next thing I would definitely suggest is changing the key binding for exit vehicle. You will have already cancelled it out by changing your roll to E, but you'll want to move it somewhere else. What I did a lot in my first days of Planetside 2 was excitedly spawn a Reaver, fly off, and then accidentally hit the exit vehicle key. It is the most gutting thing that can ever happen to you. So move it well out of the way. The T key is far enough that I can reach it if I want to exit, but it's not too close that I hit it accidentally. The other things that I have bound are my pitch up and down controls. Now I have two thumb buttons on my mouse. Many of you may be the same. That's where I have mine bound, so that when I want to do a full pitched turn, I simply have to hold down that button. So on to flight sensitivity. Many people out there will tell you to turn the flight sensitivity right up. I completely disagree. This is detrimental to a new pilot as it makes the aircraft difficult to aim and control. However, if you feel like this is your style, go right ahead because there's no wrong or right answer in Planetside 2. For those of you in the same boat as me, the reason we have bound our roll and pitch keys is so that we can use the full lock. So, basically, I can use the full flight vehicle sensitivity without having it turned up by simply pressing my bound keys for my controls. Last thing in controls, guys, is joysticks. Many people ask me to recommend a good joystick for Planetside 2. Well, the answer is there isn't one. Planetside's flight mechanics have been designed with a mouse and keyboard in mind. If you're flying with a joystick and you're against someone with a keyboard and mouse, they will win every time. Hey guys, lesson 3, flying and navigating. It's time to get in the air. So I'm going to hold down the W key at the same time as feathering the space key to keep aloft until I'm in the air. Now I bet the newer pilots out there are thinking, well, this is great. I'm flying in a straight line. Now how do I turn around? Well, there are a few different ways. First is flat yaw. Keep the aircraft level and use one of your yaw keys. Use your mouse to keep it level as you do that. This is a very simple but slow way of turning. Good for changing bearings towards a waypoint. Very, very simple. Not very good as an evasive manoeuvre though. A quicker way to turn is the banking turn. So I roll about 20 degrees to one side, hit my yaw key, and then pull up slightly with the mouse. This is still a smooth and controlled way of turning, but it's faster than simply yawing. The last turn is full pitch. So for this, I'm going to roll 90 degrees to one side and hit my bound pitch up key. Notice how fast the aircraft turns when I do this? This is better as an evasive manoeuvre and is good for extreme turns. However, the flight mechanics in Planetside 2 make the ESFs turn faster towards their belly than towards their dorsal. So the other turn I can suggest to you is still a full pitch turn, except instead of pressing your pitch up key when you roll, press your pitch down key. If you combine this with pulling your throttle down at the same time, you will often come straight around on an enemy aircraft and be able to boost straight through them, like so. I would suggest in travel, guys, that you don't use your afterburner. It may get you there faster, but if you get dropped by a bogey, you will have no chance of escape, unfortunately. So, that's that lesson over. Lesson 4 is landing. Now there are two types of landing I'm going to teach you today, guys. The first one is the straight-in landing, which is the easiest to perform, and is very useful if you need to get to the ground quickly to make repairs. Now, just like a traditional aircraft, it's nice and simple. I'm going to pick a landing spot, fly down to it and level off. At the same time, I'm going to reduce my throttle to nearly 0. Once I'm happy, I will reduce my throttle to 0 and allow the aircraft to float the last few meters to the ground. Simple. To take off from here, I can either hit the space key and go straight up, or I can take off in a similar fashion. The second landing I'm going to teach you is the vertical landing. So I'm going to fly my way back to the landing pads over here somewhere. Basically, the VTOL aircraft are capable of landing in a straight line, straight from up and down. So I'm going to pick my landing pad, I'm going to fly towards it, and I'm going to begin slowing down. I'm going to reduce my throttle to 0. As you can see, my thrusters begin pointing down and I begin floating down. Again, I'm going to feather my space key so that I land in the right spot of the landing pad. Very simple. Once I'm happy, I'm going to press the control key to finish the landing. Don't do that from too great a height because you can damage the aircraft. So just feather it down. Very simple. That's how you land on a landing pad to rearm, and both of those landings have many alterations that you can try with practice. I'll try and demonstrate a few now. That was a straight-in landing with an afterburner to get down faster. Let's see if I can find my favourite little aircraft tower over here somewhere. These can be quite difficult to land on because you can't always see underneath them. So if you start from underneath and begin slowing down at this point, can then finish the manoeuvre with the space key, and that is another vertical landing. And I missed it a little bit, which is fine because we're practicing. Feather your space key, use your mouse controls which you've learnt from the first lesson, and hover back on. Nice and simple. Using your afterburner to take off can be very useful if you've just been engaged by a bogey in the air. They won't always be expecting you to do it, and it can let you get away. Last landing is coming straight down to the pad, slowing down at this point and pulling up at the last second. Notice how I wasn't aiming for the one that I was looking at, but the one after it. It's a lot easier to do this most of the time, as your arc of travel will change as you pull up. Lesson 5, guys, is aerial tactics. ESFs are like paper planes. In other words, they're flimsy. So many engagements simply start with surviving. If you're engaged by an enemy fighter, the first thing you need to do is find some cover. Fly towards some mountains or difficult terrain just like I did, and try and lose them within it. So obviously it's a good idea to practice flying within the difficult terrain. Don't forget your control key can be just as useful as your ascend key in these situations. So, if the enemy is not as good a flyer as you, they will crash, or they will break off and give up. This gives you a chance to return to the air and hunt him down whilst he's on his way back to his allies, which can be very useful. However, if he's similar in skill to you or better, he will or may be able to just keep up by luck. This is when you need to begin to get creative. This just takes some experimentation to find ways that you can turn around on the guy, or simply lose him and re-find him again. So, lots of enemy pilots will use an advanced tactic their nose at you and hover around in circles. You may have seen it in the sky before, where two ESFs are hovering around each other in a circle like two dancing ballerinas. Like so. Now, I would suggest for a beginner that if you get trapped into one of these confrontations, to get out of it as immediately as you can. Most of the pilots that use this tactic are very experienced, as it's quite difficult to do, and therefore will most likely have very good guns, which will be better than your vanilla gun. They will also have better aim, most probably. So the best thing to do in this situation is let them think that you're going to dance with them, and then boost straight past them. This will give you a few seconds to get to cover whilst they are forced to turn around, and then you can revert to your previous tactic, which is either to try and lose them and survive the battle, or find them again later. Most important thing in an ESF, guys, is not to get greedy. Like I said before, we are paper planes in the air, so don't stick onto a target too long if it means you're getting shot at. You should be doing lightning assault runs, shooting a bit and then flying off again as much as you can, unless that enemy aircraft is preoccupied with another flyer, in which case you've got a bit more time. If you've been in a fight more than 20 seconds, chances are you've either been locked onto or AA fire is going to get you, so it's best to get out of there as quickly as you can. So that's all from me, guys. Go get your ESF out and start flying. So remember to learn where your keybinds are and start to use them. Once you learn them, I promise your flying will benefit. Experiment with different maneuvers in the air and practice flying through difficult terrain. Don't forget to tune into my channel again for more Planetside 2 guides.